Hey everybody, so folks here. So I done a magic user mage video and for some reason I had this nasty echo. Found out my son had been playing with my computer. As such, there was an echo, so I deleted it and I'm starting it all over again. So if you've seen it before, it's pretty much the same thing. If you haven't seen it, then here it is. So the strengths and the weaknesses of mages, again, I'm going to skip the legendaries. Already kind of talked about them. Obviously, there's some phenomenal use out of the legendaries, but let's talk about the non-legendary guys. I'm going to start off here with Blaine. Obviously, he's the free one that you can get from the arena crusade. Boy, I'm doing well. And you know, a lot of times he is an early pick. Either someone's going to go with Mira or they're going to go with him. Now, Blaine's of course special because of his ultimate, the silence. You don't see a lot of Blaine at higher levels late game, but he still can be pretty powerful. Don't ever underestimate that silent. I go against a few teams every now and then. In fact, yesterday I was fighting one guy, you know, I'm 91, he's 91, pulls out a Blaine, you know, and a lot of teams I can kind of stay alive through the silence, but not against his team because the damage is just like mine. And so that silent is king. You know, the Blood Rock, the Lifesteal, it's not that great of a skill. It's okay early on, later. But obviously the big thing is the silence, and the Rock Twist also does some knockups. Works well with Edwin, but it can interrupt some skills. And then, of course, you have the lowering of the magic resistance, which is pretty phenomenal when you start to see what it can really do. Combined with the Chain Lightning, which is really nice because nobody likes starting off a fight more than doing 7,000-8,000 damage at the beginning. But don't forget, fighting someone with the healer shield pretty much negates that. So weaknesses are, you know, the second skill is kind of but overall he's really good. You know, item wise, you know, you're really going to want to get here, unlock that ability to get your energy faster so you can get your ultimate off. Staff's kind of stinky because it's only 20. It'd be so much better if, you know, if you could get it, you know, even at the best height. 25, it's just not that great. If you could get like 50, that'd be pretty awesome. The rest of the skills are just mediocre at best. Orange 2 is always a great option if you get there because it does the the little stunning thing when someone gets a melee range. So when a Chavez jumps in, you know, it stuns them to help prevent damage. Buys you a little bit of time. Not a lot of weaknesses other than not a lot of damage, but can help your team stay alive and do what needs to get done. That brings up Pagani. Now, Pagani is that hero that everybody and their mother hates if they don't have him. Does some phenomenal skill work. Obviously, the ultimate puts one person to sleep for a period of time, up to 8 seconds, at which point they're not doing anything. So suddenly it removes one person from the battle. Usually it's the closest person. So that might be a tank, could be a backliner. It's just whoever's kind of there at the time when he casts his ult. The lullaby is the big thing, obviously. With the sleeping that he does, you know, depending on the team you build, it can just destroy teams. But, you know, if you're playing with an AE team, well, then you're not going to get the full advantage of the sleep. But he is doing some damage to them, and they're staying asleep, which is pretty nice. Nightmare, again, reduces the energy of 2 people. Deals damage if they're asleep, then they get the torpor effect. Which, again, here, if you do that, it reduces their energy, again, by 32%, which can really knock out their ability to get to their ultimate. Pairs real well with you don't see it a lot, Vortex, because of that, because he is AE but is really there. Pretty good. Little squishy, got to get, you know, those stars, got to get that equipment up there to give him the health that he needs. But you can also run the book if you don't want to run that for the ultimate to help prevent one of those midliners jumping in, or one of the frontliners or back row guys jumping in and getting to him. So lots of options you can run there. Next we have, not Teresa, Gorgana. Now Gorgana is another free mage. It comes out of the same, you know, I'm going to do the whole crusade. Usually not picked over Blaine if someone's going the mage route. Pretty easy to get soul stones for. Really has more of a use inside the crystal dungeon because the longer the fight goes on, the better she gets. She's real weak against magic users because her whole part of everything is getting these little poison effects on, because she's got, you know, more than 50% of their ability power. So if she's got 1,000 and they've got 500, she's going to add a little poison thing, which makes all of this other stuff deal extra damage and get pretty awesome. Now her skill here does help raise her ability power throughout the fight, which is what makes her so good during Crystal Dungeon, but not necessarily in the fights that you're going to see in the arena. She's very squishy, even when stacked with the Merlin, stacked with the lifesteal item. So, you know, she dies real quick, so she's not used a lot in the arena. That's just not really her special place. Or in the Crusade. But if you have a decent team that can gather people up, say with a Zoe, and you bring them together, you can hit them all with their ultimate. You can drop some pretty good damage there too. So it's kind of a tricky situation when to use her and how to use her. But she's more of a PvE versus a PvP. Going from there, we get to Edwin, which we're going to skip. Now, Diachan, she is either loved by you or hated by you. Really needs 5 stars for the health because she's very squishy and needs that hit points. Now, obviously, her goal is to get to her ultimate. Once people start dying and she's still alive, she starts dropping the damage because of her Primal Fury here. But the cool part is every time somebody dies, she gets 276 energy, and she gets an increase in her attack speed. She's throwing out, you know, all these other things, so it's really pretty good. You know, she's a good hero. She just needs to get there. Often she's played with Merlin because of the lifesteal component to try and keep her alive. But again, she's got to get to her ult, and that is her weakness. Early on, low stars, she just dies so quick and never gets there. Late game, I've seen a few teams with her that have done real well. But again, she's got to get to her ult, and she's got to see some people die. Now, Jasmine's the other part of that whole I'm going to run Pagani thing. Jasmine is actually a pretty good sleeper on her own by herself because of her skills, which comes and attacks the back line. You know, this is pretty cool, basically. The Terror Shade drops back there, does some damage. Not much, but it puts to sleep anybody it hits. Now, if the totem's there, it gets caught, but if there's no totem, it can sometimes get up to 3 people and asleep, and of course they're not going anywhere as long as they're not hit. She does damage when they're asleep. It doesn't wake them up. On top of that, every time somebody falls asleep, attack damage and ability power increases for her allies up to 5 times. So again, if you're playing with a Pagani and her, you can see suddenly a 4,000, you know, increase in your AP, sometimes 5, depending on how they all get hit, which is huge in AD and attack damage. And then of course your ultimate summons the lamp, blinds people, and then of course if it's not done in time, everybody's put to sleep, which makes the team really good. Kind of squishy, middle row. Really need to have her inside somewhere protected, but she does a pretty good job. You just got to get her 5 stars, kind of go from there. But I do like Jasmine. So that brings us to Salmon. Now, of course, if you remember from my other videos, I got him leveled up to orange basically just to help me with 139. He is not a huge damage dealer. I did get him Awaken, which is, you know, increases damage. But really the key for him was his ability to increase the crazy power of your team. Increase the attack speed, increase the ability damage, or power, and of course, every now and then he's increasing his ability power of his teammates again. So there's about an 1,100, 1,200 point increase that he's given to his team, which is pretty nice. But, you know, I wouldn't say I'd run him on any of my other teams. He's not like, whoa, it's so much damage. I mean, even with his ultimate, which does some damage, I just don't see him being like an in-game guy. Now, maybe some dude out there has him 5 plus orange 5 and rune core to the max, and I mean maybe, but at this moment he's more of a buffer for me for PvE than he is for anything else. That's my honest opinion on him. You know, you might have a different one, but he does what he did, which I needed, which was Crystal Dungeon to get to 140. But after that, I haven't touched him since. Media got an Awakening. She is a pretty good damaging mage. Suffers from the number of attacks it takes before she can cast her little Baneling Bite and everything. Of course, that's awesome now. You know, with the Baneling Bite, she gets 2 Lordling Bugs, which can silence people. So, you know, now with her new thing, she's got a bind, obviously, that does massive damage, which is pretty good, actually. She has a hit rate of silence within a certain circle, which is nice because it stacks well with Blaine, and anytime you can silence somebody, it's cool. She's got the little pet, which can, you know, be targeted by people, but it does damage, and it's not bad. She's increasing her own ability power, but, you know, with the awakening, she got a lot better. It's still not what I would say makes her the best mage out there, obviously, if you got legends, but if you don't, she is really pretty good. And again, she will work well with Blaine. You can pretty much make a shutdown silence team if you're not careful real quick. Obviously, just watch out for gridlock. Does suffer a little bit on the squishy side, but she's actually a little bit more tankier than some of the other ones. So she's really not a bad tank. Or tank, I'm doing good. Mage. It's one of those days. It's been busy. And she is part of the flying team, which helps, of course, when you fight Grunk. Now, Emily got an awakening. She doesn't get as much love as she should. Upon awakening, she's pretty powerful. You know, her ultimate, is probably her biggest thing that helps her out. She's a phenomenal crystal dungeon person, you know, bringing this pet in there and the damage it does. It taunts them, it stuns them. You know, she's got a laser here, which does magic damage. She's got a cone damage here. Her force skill gives a stun to her energy beams thing. So now she's got not only an ultimate stun, but that one target energy stun, which can help lock down a tank real early. You know, but she just doesn't get as much love in the PvP side. She's mainly, again, saved for those sections of the Crystal Dungeon. But as a non-VIP person, she does really well as a mage. Because of her pet, because of its tankiness. But she's just got to get to that. And sometimes that's the hardest part because she is a little squishy. But not as bad as some others. Karas got an awakening. Obviously, he's gotten a lot better. Basically now when he gets near death, he recovers massive health and energy when it drops to 0. And during this time, it's going to continue to drop, and he's going to receive healing that's doubled for the next time. So it really helps him stay alive. Still, a lot of people play him with Merlin for the lifesteal. You know, he's dealing damage up to the entire team or 5 people. He can cast it early on, but the more energy he has, the more damage it does. You know, he does damage to one person. He has a knock-up. He's not bad. He just needs the fight to go on a long time. He's real weak against burst targets. So you'll see like a Lilith, a Sizo. I know those are 2 legendaries, don't get me wrong. And him put together on a team, and suddenly it's like, I can't kill anyone. You know, it goes on for days. Unless you throw a healing person like a Pandarus, like a Candy, or Luke, either one of those. So he's not bad. Just, again, not very often seen at later levels, but he does a really good job, so don't underestimate him. Now, Alma is a loved hero by many people. Comes out great early game. Has some pretty good skills. Does some pretty good damage. The ultimates, you know, it's not bad. It's a knock-up. Takes forever to cast, which is really bad. But because of the damage she does in the AE, the spirits that she summons, the lowering of the magic resist on your team, and of course now she got the Ghost King, which does really good, and lowers more magic resist. She's not a bad addition to a magic-based team. Again, she's going to be equipped with a magic-based team. It's okay if you equip her with an Emily. I don't see that being like the greatest thing all the time, because you might need a better composition like with a Blaine or a Silencer or something else. But she does a really good job. Again, often partnered with the Merlin for the lifesteal aspect. But has a really great captain skill, Lightning Blast, you know. So suddenly she's going to really increase that damage. It's going to do a lot of good damage early on in the game, especially if you have it maxed out. Does suffer a little bit, you know. She's decently hit points, but it's nothing major. You just, again, she's one of those random people. Sometimes you see her in the arena, sometimes you don't. On a non-VIP team, would I pick her? You know, yeah, I probably would if I'm a non-VIP player, just because she has a lot of good skills. Her pets take taunts. They attract people's tag damage. I mean, so it's really good sometimes to see someone waste an ultimate on her pet. That's one of the things I love about her. Baggins, I know Baggins doesn't get love from me. Baggins works great if you're building a bullet time team for Sky City. Outside of that, not a lot of love. Not going to see Baggins on any team that I'm building. It doesn't really mesh with a magic team. I mean, is doing magic damage, is doing magic damage, is doing magic damage, is reducing magic damage, but then my ultimate's for AD based people. I don't really understand that. So I just never use Baggins. I have some friends that love him, but the majority of them that do use him pretty much use him only for Sky City and are running bullet time teams. So I don't have much to say there. Now I love Crabby. Crabby is a phenomenal person when it comes to doing damage, but the problem with Crabby is his AI targeting is terrible. You have an ultimate which can do phenomenal damage, sometimes up to 4 people, and it sets it off where it only hits 1. Or it sets it off right as the person's walking forward instead of, you know, putting it where they're going or in the middle of the team, which I would prefer, you know, put it in the middle of the team or target the middle and the back row. And so the person walks out of it and takes no damage or maybe 1 hit. So it's such a beat down that you got such a great magic user that does such bad stuff with their skills. Now, that's the ultimate here, Ion Storm. The laser that shoots through the team is always nice. It does good damage. Nothing like you see in Crystal Dungeon, but it's still decently. I love the fact that you get a stun. Anytime you get a stun, it's something pretty awesome. Of course, here, the Abundance Vines cause him to get energy faster, which helps him get to his ultimate faster, which, if you control it, it's a whole lot better. And then Horror Story is increased magic pin for your heroes. That's obviously a great thing when you're running a magic-based team, but of course, then it has to be the Horror Story, which, if you look in the Horror Story, outside of a media, yeah, that's pretty much about it. You're probably going to run, huh? I mean, you're probably not going to see him ran on a Jasmine team just because. So kind of a icky, oh yeah, here you go kind of thing. So we'll leave that alone too. Now Delphos is a phenomenal single target damage dealer. If you got 1 tank, he will shred that tank with just such pleasure. But if there's 2 tanks, well, then it pretty much just sucks. And if there's more people targeting on that front line, it even gets worse. So against 1 target, he is the phenomenal, I'm going to say, I hate to say king of damage for a non-VIP caster. I mean, you build this guy up, you get him built, and you put him against 1 tank, you know, and he's going to shred that tank to pieces. Of course, unless he's Kaiser, but we'll leave that alone. But if you get anything more than that, the damage just drops off considerably. So that is his weakness, you know, really picking a team around it. How much damage is done. Obviously, the deep burn, you know, it only hits 1 person, it does extra damage. And there is no awakening, so it's kind of like, you know, it's just lacking. It needs a little bit of love. Definitely needs some kind of awakening. Fireball skill is really, oof, you'd be better off with the meteor on him because he's hitting the front line. But I'm not a developer. I'm just a guy that gets to critique them because I enjoy it. Now, Karna supposedly is getting an awakening. That was in the last patch notes. You can go to the main page to look at the patch notes. So we'll see how that comes out, what that does to her. She is actually a really good VIP 0 magic user. Her ultimate's good as long as you use it in the proper method where you hit more than 1 person, which sometimes the computer does not. And she has some other great thing where she can hit up to 5 of the enemies in a row. Who doesn't like to hit the entire team? Magic Halo, which of course slows them down, does damage. Which, you know, the slow's not a huge thing, but it's still the fact that you can hit multiple people. The cool part here is she's strengthening the team's hit points, which is always a nice thing. That's probably the best skill she has sometimes in some ways. Feels like it falls off at later levels, but still any extra hit points is extra hit points. And finally, her captain skill, Chain Lightning, is not a bad skill at all. But, you know, a lot of people just don't raise it on her. Now, once she gets her awakening skill and we see what it is, I'll be interested to see how much more playtime she might get. But in her current state, she's usually reserved to VIP 0 teams. And that brings us back to the top of Vortex, which ends the things for the magic users. Now, if you got any questions, comments, feel free to leave them. These are just my opinions. That doesn't mean anything outside of my opinion. But every mage has a use in some capacity, shape, or form. It's just that it may not be for PvP, it may only be for PvE, or it may be only for PvP, because let's be honest, running Pagani and Jasmine inside the Crystal Dungeon is often a terrible thing because you don't do enough damage before you run out of time. That's just my thoughts. So let me know yours. Hope you'll have a great one. Talk to y'all later.